Hello everybody, it is Jack from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. And if you guys are looking for PTC geocodes, make sure you check out the Potown store, where you can use the code OmniPoke in all caps for an extra 5% off of your order. Today we're going to be doing the annual season review. I'm going to be taking a look at how I think my season went. Obviously this season was a little bit different because of everything that happened with events being shut down because of coronavirus, but I think it's still an important sort of video to do, to look back and see whether I achieved my goals that I set out at the end of last season, or at the start of this season, as well as analyse how I did and maybe make some goals towards the next season. So yeah, it's a review that I'm sure Joe will be doing at some point as well, but obviously the season has been a bit shorter, so it's going to be a bit of a different video this time. First off, last year's goals. As you can see, I've just taken a screenshot from last year's video. My goals were pretty simple. Worlds Invite once again, win 3 cups, 3 day 2s including UIC, break 500 points, and explore some more statistics of the game as a bit of a side one. The first of which I did indeed achieve. I did get my Worlds Invite. I finished this season on 481 CP, so I did get my Worlds Invite. As you'll see throughout the video, I actually only won 2 cups this year. So I didn't quite hit the mark of winning 3. I did get to a couple of finals, which I was just slightly short of being able to make it through to winning that 3 cup mark. But I do feel, had the season carried on, maybe I would have been able to achieve that goal. So given that we had 2/3 of the season and I won 2/3, and I won 2 out of 3 cups, I do feel like I was potentially on track to do that, if not at least have a few more, maybe top 4s and finals under my belt by the end of the season. Similarly, with day 2s, 3 day 2s including EUIC. Obviously EUIC never happened, so we can't say whether I would have day 2'd that or not. I did have 2 day 2s right before lockdown was imposed though, and all the events were cancelled. I day 2'd Bochum Regionals and I day 2'd Malmo Regionals. So I got 2 of those. Again, maybe had the rest of the season carried on, I would have hit that 3rd. I did also day 2 a couple of online events as well, which I'll get to later on. So arguably you could say I got my 3 day 2s, but I could also see the argument for saying I didn't. But yeah, it was another one that I feel like I maybe would have, or maybe you could see that my season track record, I was on track for being able to make this goal. Similarly with 500 points, like I say, I finished on 481, but we only had 2/3 in the season. We still had EUIC, at least 1 more regionals, and I was looking to go to NAIC as well. So that would have been 3 big tournaments where I would have had a huge opportunity to bag some final points. So again, I was on track for beating this, but unfortunately because of the lockdown I was unable to make it. And finally, exploring some more statistics. This season has been great for both me personally and sort of the statistics side of the game. I was able to work with a lot of different people this year, which was really, really exciting. Most notably working with the Limitless and Arcanine guys as part of CCG to combine all 3 of our sort of resources and make some really, really interesting statistics for their online events. So I feel like this was pretty much achieved overall. In general, it's just going to be a goal that I'm going to continue to strive towards getting involved with. I love the stats side of the game, so it's definitely one that I want to keep on digging away at, and I'm hoping that now the foundations have been laid with Arcanine and Limitless, we can hopefully bring you some more statistics, or I can bring you some more statistics as part of CCG and OmniPoke in the future as well. So I feel like my goals were relatively achieved. Obviously, lockdown aside, these 3 weren't achieved, but I feel I was on track for them. So I would like to say I achieved all of my goals, but I could also see that I didn't actually achieve these 3 goals. So it's kind of tough, but I think personally I'm pretty happy with how my season went, given that these were my goals at the start of it. The overall summary, as I've said, 481 championship points, which is an increase of 77 on last year, so an increase is always good. 30 events attended overall across cups, challenges, regionals, specials. No internationals this year, which really sucked because of obviously everything that happened. But yeah, across those 4 types of events, I went to 30 different events. which meant I was pretty active this season, especially as we only had 2/3 of the season, like I say. My most successful deck was Ability Zard. I really mained that at the start of the season, along with a variety of other Welder variants. And my most successful most successful events were the Malmo Regionals and the Limitless Qualifier 4. I've kind of put them together. Malmo was a top 32, Limitless was a top 16, but obviously Limitless was an online event, which I don't know, some people may not consider as important. I don't know. I still think they were very, very influential to this season since everything that happened. So huge shout out to them. And yeah, for IRL event, my most successful was Malmo, and for online, it was the Qualifier 4. So this season kicked off with my first World Championships, which is honestly one of the best experiences of my life. You always hear about how good Worlds is, and it's no joke. It was one of the best. I treated it as a holiday, and it was one of the best holidays I'd ever had. As you can see, I did pretty bad. Day 1 and Day 2, I played the same 60, I believe. I played Spelltag Malamar with a Tech Genesect and Ultra Necrozma for the mirror. And unfortunately, both times I dropped. I missed points at both. I really didn't care because it was my first World, so I was kind of just in a buzz anyway. But even so, it would have been nice to be able to get points in my first Worlds. It was a list that, well, not a list in particular, but Malamar was quite popular in the UK at the time. And it seemed like a lot of the UK were bringing it, and I think in general, a lot of the UK did turn up with Malamar. It was a list that was constructed well within our friend group, sort of. We bounced a lot of ideas off of one another. I was initially going to be interested in playing Pikarom, but really sort of came off the idea because it was so targeted. Malamar felt like the solid second option. It was going to be popular, but it wasn't going to be as targeted. It turns out I was pretty wrong. Malamar was by far the most popular deck in Day 1 of Worlds, from my experience at least, from looking around the tables where I was. And as such, I feel like the meta was prepared for it. That being said, it's obviously very easy to say, but that being said, me and a couple of the people that built the list, and we all played it together. I believe it was me. I believe Joe played Malamar as well. He played a slightly different Tina Chomp build though. Our friend Tim played a very similar build to us. Tamal, obviously a great UK player, helped build the list. There was a lot of people on Malamar, and in all fairness, we've all sat down and looked at the meta since, and we think the list was not far off being able to push us into Day 2. Tim was able to make Day 2 with the list. I believe it was 1 or 2 cards different from my own Tamal's. I think me and Tamal played the exact 60. And like I say, Joe played Tina Chomp instead of the Ultra Necrozma package. But I think in general, we were very, very close to hitting the mark with the Malamar. I think we potentially should have played... We didn't play customs, and we potentially should have played customs. And I think that could have genuinely been the breaking point. The Genesect felt really, really good. It felt like it was something that a lot of people didn't expect. It was a pivot. For anyone who doesn't know what it does, it has free retreat if they have an EX or GX on the board. And then for Metal DC, it does 30 and 230 snipes. So it was really, really good for setting up Inkays and Malamar knockouts in the mirror, either ready for Sky Scorching Light or just with Giratina plus spell tag pings. It was really, really strong. And I think, honestly, if we ran back the event with maybe just finding space for customs, we would have a bit of a better success rate. Obviously, it's impossible to tell, but I really do think the list was close. No one had prepared for the Mewtwo playing, or we hadn't prepared for the Mewtwo playing SPD Oxys. I feel like it was kind of under the radar, and that was a big thorn in the side for Malamar, because if Mewtwo was able to go first, they were able to get the 20 damage counter placement, which basically always took out 3 Inkays and really put the Malamar player behind. So that was the biggest hurdle, and would have been the biggest hurdle going into Day 2. But Day 1, there really was not much Mewtwo. It was a lot of Pikarom, a lot of Malamar, and in general, I feel like they were matchups we were fairly okay against. I feel like we definitely could have done better, but in general, the event was so good anyway. I really didn't care that I didn't do great. I think I ended on you needed to go 6 and 2, and I ended on a 4. I dropped at 4-3, I believe, in Day 1. And Day 2, or in the DC Open, I don't remember what happened particularly, but I know it wasn't great. I'm pretty sure I lost 2 or 3 on the bounce after winning the first couple of rounds. So yeah, it wasn't great, but even so, I loved the experience. I'm super upset we didn't get a Worlds this year, but nonetheless, we're going to have a great Worlds next year. And yeah, no regrets about playing Malamar, even though I've really began to stop playing and almost hating the deck ever since. I think for the time it was the correct option. Into quarter one. Quarter one was really weird because it actually started before Worlds, so half of these decks on here were pre-Worlds decks. Almost everything up until Cardiff Cup was all pre-Worlds, and then after this was post-Worlds. So as you can see, I kicked things off. I just top 8'd with Zapdos Beasts in Bristol, so I decided to play, I believe it was almost the same 60, and unfortunately I did pretty bad. It wasn't the same 60 because there was new cards. There was a new set out, Unbroken Bonds, but in general, I didn't change too much, and I did pretty bad. I remember hitting Mill, hitting another couple of matchups, and just in general, not doing great. The next day, though, I did switch things up and played Pikarom with a Marshchamp to see whether it was kind of an initial test for Worlds to see whether we were able to put in a Marshchamp in a meta where Marshchamp was theoretically worse because Pikarom wasn't as good. Even though it was good, it was like Pikarom was by far the most talked about deck for Worlds, and it was only like it was just tier 1. It wasn't BDIF. It was just tier 1. So we wanted to see whether Marshchamp was good. It also gained fighting, or what's it called? Is it Black Belt? Black Belt in Unified Minds, which you could Volkner for to attach and attack for basically 1 energy if you were behind on prizes. So theoretically, the Marshchamp in the Pikarom got better. So we wanted to test it. It was me and I believe it was Connor Bird and Tamau who all kind of played this weird... I don't know whether they both ended up sticking with the Marshchamp, but they played a little bit of the Marshchamp list to see whether it was working. I got 3rd place, but in general, the Marshchamp, I think I used it once against a Jolteon build my friend Luke was playing. I played a couple of Pikaroms, and in general, it just wasn't necessary. So I decided to drop the Marshchamp after that, even though it did the deck did well. I decided to drop the Marshchamp. The next weekend, I played in Daventry Cup, where I played Pikarom with a 1-1 Jolteon, and unfortunately, this was just a case of matchup roulette. I hit a lot of bad matchups that day, and I think I finished 3-3 in the end, when 4-2 was the bubble for cut, or maybe I finished 4-2 and bubbled for cut. I can't remember in general, but I know I didn't quite make it into cut, and I felt like Pikarom was still a strong pick. Unfortunately, I just hit some pretty bad matchups, and as you can see, I stuck with Pikarom, this time cutting out the Marshchamp, cutting out the Jolteon, and just going full consistency for a best of 1 cup in Hatfield, which was my first cup win of the season. Played against things, a few Mirrors, a few Zapdos Beasts, a few pretty scary decks as well in best of 1. There was like a Magnezone deck that all of a sudden was able to, with the Zero Aura from, I think it's, I don't know what set the Zero Aura from, maybe Team Up, which basically did 350 on, or 250 on turn 2 or 3 against me, which I wasn't expecting at all. So yeah, it was pretty scary. But yeah, I was able to win that cup, and it kind of solidified that Pikarom was a good pick for Worlds for me. Despite not playing in the Worlds format, I knew what I was doing with the deck. I don't know why I came off of the Pikarom bandwagon, other than just hype, I guess. I really regret not playing Pikarom more after Worlds, because I basically dropped Pikarom after Worlds completely, and then as you'll see towards the end of the season, I pick it up again, and I really enjoy it again, so I don't know why I dropped Pikarom. Like I say, I still feel like Malamar was the correct pick for Worlds, but I think I shouldn't have dropped Pikarom quite as hard as I did after Worlds. After Worlds took place, we had Cardiff and Swansea Cup. It was a double cup in Wales that me, Joe, and a couple of our friends went to, and I played abilities out for both. Top 8 at day 1, losing to Pikarom in top 8, and then unfortunately missed on day 2. In general, I felt like I was beginning to understand the deck, trying to learn the deck a bit more. We were a week before Sheffield Regionals, and I really was eyeing up the fact that Abilitizard seemed like it had answers for everything in the format, so I just wanted to get some time in with the deck, and I'm pretty glad it paid off, because 1 top 8 was nothing to sniff at. Unfortunately, the second top 8 I wasn't able to make, but even so, I felt like I began to understand the deck a lot more, which is always kind of what cups and challenges are for, I feel. If you're able to go to regionals as well, it's important to get your reps in with decks in cups and challenges. So I was at 107 points at this point. It was a really long quarter one for me. The Cups and Challenges continued with Milton Keynes and Daventry Challenge both playing Ability Zard and getting points at both. As you can see, this whole slide is basically almost all Ability Zard. Cannock Cup, I played Ability Zard again, and unfortunately, this was where I started to get a bit more confident with changing the list myself. It was after this tournament that I decided to add in Mew, and Mew was really, I think, underrated in the deck, honestly. I think a lot of people didn't consider Mew because it didn't seem to do anything. But one very notable thing it did was it forced Blounds and Mewtwo players to... It forced more Gust from Blounds and Mewtwo players. In general, what happened against especially Blounds was they would take 2 prizes with their... with a Blacephalon GX. Then they would take 2 prizes. Then they'd get a load of B-Strings and be able to take 2 prizes with Customs. And then they'd be able to take 2 prizes with a Naganadel Snipe on a Dedenne at the end of the game. What it forced was, if you were able to stream 1 prize attackers, which Ability I was really good at doing, it forced them to have to take an extra knockout because they couldn't then just snipe the Dedenne. They either had to find their second set of Customs, which was doable for sure, but as Dedenne was included in the list, lists got a lot more turbo and a lot more sort of discard draw, and because of that, you were able to sometimes punish discarding early Customs by putting a Mew down in the mid game and then forcing them to take 2 extra 1 prizes, and at that point was where the break point of the matchup I felt fell in Ability Zard's favour. And that was what I feel is, even though it was 1 small card change, I felt like it was something that a lot of people really missed with the deck. I know a lot of lists didn't play it, and I really was a big advocate of Mew in the list for a while. And it was after Cannock Cup, where I got 0 CP, that I actually realised I wanted to play the Mew because I lost to 2 Blounds on the bounce, noticing that basically their win con was just Sniper Dedenne. So I was able to pick up on the Mew, added in Mew. I didn't play any Mewtwo or Blounds at Telford. I believe it was basically just Ability Zard mirrors all day. But I was able to take another first place there with Ability Zard. And again, it felt good, my hard work with the deck paying off, if that makes sense. After committing to Ability Zard, you can see that it started off not great, 25 CP and 0 CP. Then started to pick up with a 32 CP and a third and a second place. Then I really tanked at Cannock, and this is usually something that I do. Something I would do is I would usually just give up on a deck at this point if I just tank really hard for an event. But I'm really glad I stuck with it because it was able to reward me in Telford, which was nice. At this point, I was very close to my invite. I got my invite super early because of various other cups and various other large events, or not super close to my invite, but I felt comfortable enough to try out Pidgeotto Control. As you can see, Pidgeotto Control really did not go well. Pidgeotto is a really interesting one because my CP with it was abysmal. It was really bad, but I think it was by far my the deck I enjoyed playing the most because I think I learnt the most from playing it. How to sequence things, more sequencing sort of things that I learnt, which I feel like you're always learning in this game anyway. But Pidgeotto was a deck that was really it was really important to focus sequencing on. So as you'll see throughout my time with Pidgeotto, it's a pretty love-hate relationship. I either do fairly well with it or don't do well with it at all. But I think in general it was one of my favourite decks to play this season, even though a lot of people hate it. I do think it's a very valid strategy, and I feel like to me it was probably the most rewarding deck to play because it punished misplays hard. So when you did well, you knew that you had played well because you hadn't been punished for it punished misplays really badly, and if you played well, it gave you a sense that you'd made decisions correctly and sequenced correctly and that kind of thing. So that was why I really enjoyed Pidgeotto Control. But as you'll see throughout the slides, it's kind of a love-hate relationship. Finally, Birmingham Cup. I played Ability Zard again. This was when Pidgeotto really started taking off, and I really started playing a lot more Pidgeotto. I super scrubbed with Ability Zard, and I remember this was basically when I dropped the deck. Because at this point, I played 2 regionals with Worlder-based decks, and there was a long disparity between these 2 cups. Telford Cup was about 6 weeks, I believe, before Birmingham Cup. So by this point, I'd played a lot of Pidgeotto Control online, I played a lot of Ability Zard online, and had started falling out of favour with it after doing well with it. It seemed to be getting worse and worse in the meta. This is something I've noticed about Ability Zard. It does really well in undeveloped metas, but as metas develop, it does a lot worse. And this was kind of the final nail in the coffin. After doing well with it, I took around 6 weeks. It was around 6 weeks between these 2 events where I started to learn how to play Pidgeotto a lot better. And I really fell out of favour with Ability Zard. And I really wish I'd played a bit Pidgeotto at this tournament because I think it was a very, very strong pick. Finally, quarter 3, Nottingham Cup. I came in 8th place with Pidgeotto Control again. It was a pretty strong deck overall, but I think in general, I lost to Guardian in top 8, which typically is a very, very favourable matchup. Actually, Nottingham Cup was quarter 2. This should be in quarter 2, but yeah, Nottingham Cup was in quarter 2, and I was able to. I lost to a Guardian in top 8, which really sucked because Guardian I think was a very, very favourable matchup. Oh no, it wasn't quarter 2, it was quarter 1. What am I saying? It was quarter 1. Lost to a Guardian. I think it was a very favourable matchup, but basically in top 8 conditions, if you lose one game, it's very, very difficult to win with Pidgeotto because it needs to win along game 1 and basically not complete a game 2. Because it doesn't take prizes. If your opponent wins game 1 or wins a game and then takes a prize, they just automatically win at the end of time. So I think I was pretty unlucky to finish in 8th or in top 8 because Guardian was a very favourable matchup that I just kind of drew dead against. And I think in general I was very, very favoured going into top 4 in the final because it was just a lot of good matchups. But that being said, it was still, again, more learning. And like I say, it's more of this learning curve with Pidgeotto. I was very much learning the deck. It seems like a love-hate relationship, but every tournament I played with it, I felt very, very confident in what I was doing. And in general, like I say, it was one of my favourite decks to play this season. Finally, you can see the Turbo Turtles run. This was sort of an idea that Joe and I came up with towards Cologne Regionals. We were playing a lot of Ability Zard, and Turbo Turtles basically spawned from the fact that Turtle was just becoming more and more useful at dealing with 2 and 3 prize Pokemon. So why didn't we run 2? Well, it forces Welder so much because even though you can Welder to any target because you can Explosive Jet off of any target, you still had to find the Welders. So we thought, well, why don't we just focus our Welders on Turtonators and add in like a 3-3 Naganadel line and build up damage that way. And as you can see, it went fairly okay. Top 8 in Sheffield with Turbo Turtles, losing to a Malamar. Malamar was almost an auto loss, to be fair. It meant that you basically auto lost Malamar whilst you sacrificed Malamar and the other 1 prize matchups while gaining percentage points on the multiple prize matchups. And unfortunately, it was Malamar that took me out of top 8 in Sheffield. Daventry, I lost a very, very agonising game to Pikarom in the final. I do feel I was favoured, but unfortunately, I got pretty unlucky. But it was a really, really good game, and it taught me, again, a lot about the deck. It was right before we took the deck to a regionals. Leicester Challenge, or was it? It might have been right after. Either way, I felt like I learnt a lot from the deck because I played against a lot of Pikarom that day, and in general, it was a nice way to sort of secure the matchup in my mind. Leicester and Daventry challenges. Leicester, it was pretty much a write-off because I hit 2 Malamar in the 3 rounds, so that was always going to be rough. And then Daventry was a 4th place finish with Turbo Turtles. Again, just not great matchups, but not awful matchups. I was pretty happy with the 4th place because I think I lost round 1 to... and then lost round 1 and tied round 2, and I think I bubbled into 4th place on a 1-1-1 record or something stupid like that. So yeah, I was pretty happy with the 10 CP. But in general, Turtles was a very big pet deck for Joe and myself, and a couple of our friends actually, to be fair. And it was another great deck to play. I really enjoyed it. Large events. It was a pretty poor performance at large events in quarter one. Sheffield Regionals was a top 128 with Mewtwo Zard. This was, again, another creation that me and Joe made. It was on the way back from Swansea and Cardiff Cups that weekend. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. We were driving back to Joe's, and we were like, what if we take Ability Zard, add 2 Mewtwo's and a Family Zard, and basically run Ability Mewtwo. And it was really, really good. Joe unfortunately didn't do great with it. I got top 128, but our friend Luke Williams made it all the way into day 2. I believe he top 32'd with it. And in general, the deck did get some legs as time went on. So it was nice, kind of, even though we weren't the complete innovators. It was also played by a couple of the CCG guys, I believe. And even though we weren't like the sole innovators, it was really, really nice. Kind of paving the way for an archetype that actually didn't completely flop. It never broke out into mainstream success, but I think it was a fairly strong like tier 2 deck at the time, and I think it was nice being, or somewhat paving the way for that archetype, which was cool because I've never really done that before. So it was nice being one of the first people to ever play this deck, which our friends did well with, but also a couple of people, I believe it was in Latin America, a lot of people picked it up. Not necessarily our list, maybe Luke's list, I don't know, but the concept, at least, they picked up the concept, which was cool. So yeah, that was something new for me. I've never really been at the forefront of making a new archetype that people have played in other regions as well, rather than just our little friend group. Cologne Regionals, I played Turbo Turtles, and unfortunately I just had a pretty bad day. I don't remember the day too well, but I think in general, it was just a mix of abilities. Abilities I was pretty 50-50, and I basically went 50-50 against those. I hit a couple of 1-prize matchups, which, as I've said, weren't great. I hit a couple of 2-prize matchups, which were good, but in general, it wasn't an ideal turnout. And finally, Paris SPE. I played Ability Zard. I remember just basically not knowing what to play for this event, so I just picked up Ability Zard. It was an okay pick, but I definitely should have played something like Pidgeotto. Just because I think the deck was at that point inherently a lot weaker, so I think Pidgeotto or something like that would have been a lot stronger. But yeah, so my quarter one, I finished on 3-4-1, and I was super happy with that because it meant I could like really chill for the rest of the season, go to what I wanted, which ended up being a lot of events anyway. But there was no pressure to do well because I felt pretty confident and able to being able to get the last few points for my Worlds Invite. Quarter 2's Cups and Challenges. I kicked things off with an expanded cup where I played Darkrai Dragons. I actually scooped in top 8 for this in order to play a challenge in the evening because I felt I needed to get into the finals to achieve my invite from the cup, whereas I needed to just get top 4 of the challenge in order to get my invite. So I felt like it was more likely that I was actually going to get the invite from the challenge. Turns out I scrubbed out of the challenge. I went 0-2-1. I went 1-2-1 drop, or 1-1-1 drop, which meant I wasn't going to get points, which really sucked. But I still don't think I would have got points in the expanded top 8 because my top 4 was an auto loss. So I would have had to basically beat an auto loss. It was a mirror that was teched for the mirror, which I wasn't. It was very heavily teched for the mirror, which I wasn't, so I think I was still correct to play in Canic Challenge, even though it looks like it was a waste of time. Nottingham Cup, I played Guardian. This was a big... It was a very strange cup for me. I more went for social purposes, and just to kind of test out what I wanted to play. Joe told me that he felt if he was going to Bochum, Guardian would be his pick, so I picked up Guardian, tried it out. Really didn't enjoy it, to be honest. I think the deck was strong, and it's nothing against Joe. All the decks favouring, I just didn't get on with it at all. So I was really not... It was the weekend before Bochum, and I was really not looking forward to Bochum at this point because I just super scrubbed out with Guardian. But I had a really fun weekend anyway because it was... it was seeing a lot of people. It was where... me and my girlfriend got together, so it was a good tournament, but Guardian was just not the pick. I still think Guardian might have been a good pick in general for the regional, but I don't think it was really the deck for me. And I ended up playing Mewtwo in the regional anyway. The last two cups, Birmingham Cup and Daventry Cup, I played Pidgeotto Control because at this point, this was after Bochum, at which I'd achieved my invite. So I basically was playing Pidgeotto just to try and get better with the deck because I felt like it was the most rewarding deck or in terms of improving a player's skill. And at both of these cups, I bubbled top 8. In general, I don't know about Birmingham. I don't remember what did well at Birmingham. I don't think I was in a very good position to do well at Birmingham. But in Daventry, the top 8 was like insanely favoured for me. So if I'd made top 8, I think there is a real chance I could have achieved that third cup win there. But I did bubble at both of those, which I wasn't too fussed about because I had my invite. And I was, again, kind of going for more social purposes and to improve my in-game skill with Pidgeotto Control. But it would have been really good to be able to get some points at those as well, just to bump up my point total a little bit more towards that 500 goal I had. Quarter 2 large events, the only event I went to was Bochum Regionals. I got top 64 with Mewtwo and Mew Toolbox. A list very much inspired by Brent Tonneson and the Australian group of players that did really, really well in quarter 2 with the deck. Me and Logan Madden, a really good player in the UK, played, I believe it was the same 60, and he bubbled out on day 1, which was unfortunate, but it was nice that after a week of basically throwing ideas around, testing 1 or 2 different cards, this, that, and the other, it was really good that at least one of us was able to make day 2 with the list, so I was pleased about that, and I really enjoyed playing Mewtwo. I didn't play Mewtwo very much at all this season, but I really, really enjoyed playing this version of Mewtwo with the Rainbow Energy build, and the Tag Call engine. It was really, really fun. On to quarter 3, and this is where things really started to slow down in terms of events because of the coronavirus. Canet Cup, I played ADPization after basically playtesting with ADPization against Joe for like 2 or 3 hours one night, and then playing it for like 2 or 3 days on ladder. I fell in love with the deck. The deck was insane. I think it's the strongest deck I've ever played in a vacuum in the format it was in, and I think the stats wouldn't dispute that if you go and look at the Limitless stats. ADPization was so dominant in the meta. I really feel like it was just a crazy good deck. I was able to get the final with that. I lost to Ability Zard in the final, which I must admit basically hit everything it could have. But I think it was a fairly unfavorable matchup anyway. With that, they have to miss a lot for it to not be unfavorable. It's just that Ability Zard in general wasn't favorable with the rest of the meta that I don't think it really took off. But that being said, it was again around, I think it was a week before Malmo, and I was really, really pleased with how the deck felt. I played a really, really cheeky Channeler, which I ended up cutting, but I ended up hitting two Malamars. My friends Tamao and Charlie both played Malamar. I ended up hitting both of them, and the Channeler was really useful in those matchups. So I must admit that this was slightly different to the one I played in Malmo, but even so, like, this was basically my my stint of just playing ADPization because I just felt the deck was so strong. And again, I got another first place challenge with the deck as well. This time I was playing a one-off Finny instead of the one-off Channeler to see how that helped the Baby Blounds matchup. I ended up not hitting any Baby Blounds, but did hit a Big Blounds, and it was really, really good in that matchup because it meant I was taking 3 prizes on a Big Blound, which was crazy. So, yeah, and of course the quarter 3 large events. I played ADPization in Malmo as well. I actually finished dead on 30 seconds, so I finished the lowest placing player of day 2, but it was day 2 nonetheless, which rounded up the 481 CP that I managed to achieve. Joe's list was slightly different, but me and my teammate Bert Walters played a very, very similar list. I think it was maybe 1 or 2 cards out, and all 3 of us, me, Joe, and Bert, all made day 2 from CCG, which was a really, really nice sort of way to round off the season, because at this point we were it was at this event that we found that EUIC had been cancelled. So at this point, I was kind of expecting the rest of the season to be cancelled. So it was a nice way to round off the season. This was also my first season as a full member of CCG, and it was a really, really good experience. I've loved being an official team member of the team. Before I was just staff, but now I'm an official player for the team, and it's been really, really nice. The guys have obviously welcomed me with open arms because I was already in the chat anyway. But in general, it was really nice being able to come up with an ADPization list or take Bert's ADPization list and have a direct source of being able to ask about things. He really, really helped out in how I sort of lines of play that I didn't see and stuff the night before. So yeah, huge shout out to Bert for helping with ADPization. Yeah, the deck was just insane, and it was really, really it was a really good feeling knowing that me, Joe, and Bert all managed to make day 2 with the deck. So yeah, that was really, really good. On to the Limitless Qualifiers. At this point, the season had been cancelled. So the first 2 were in the Sword and Shield format. The second 2 were in the Rebel Clash format. The first 2, as I say, I was still on the ADPization hype train, and I played ADPization for both. You can find all 4 of these qualifiers on our YouTube if you ever want to go back and watch them, by the way. Missed day 2 with ADPization both times. In general, I think it was so good in the first few weeks because the deck was just so powerful. People didn't know how to deal with it, but I think people got more and more wise as to how to play the deck, add more techs for it. And even so, I still think it was the best deck in format. Even when people were teching for it, I still think it was head and shoulders above every other deck in format. So I don't regret playing ADPization, even though I didn't do great with it. However, for qualifiers 3 and 4, I did play Pikarom to a top 64 and a top 16 finish. I was actually not far off being able to qualify for the Invitational, purely based on my last 2 qualifier placements. If I'd finished top 32 and I think it was top 8, so one sort of echelon higher, I would have actually been, I think, on the bubble for making the Limitless Qualifier, which would have been insane, or making the Invitational, which would have been insane. It would have really, really rounded off the season for me in a great way. But nonetheless, I was super pleased with my performance. I really haven't played anything since then. I've been doing a lot of other Pokemon-based stuff, preparing rotation stuff, preparing a couple of other videos, and basically just taking a little bit of a break from Pokemon for a little while. But I'm really looking forward to Darkness Ablaze. That is the next thing around the corner. So the breakdown, 331 points from Cups and Challenges, 2 wins, 1 challenge win, 2 second places, 2 top 4s, 2 top 8s, so a pretty even spread. And 150 from larger events, 4 day 2s if you include the Limitless Qualifiers, 2 if not, 1 top 16 and 1 top 64 from the Limitless Qualifiers, and then 1 top... there should be 1 top 32 in here. Yeah, there should be a top 32 in here as well. There's also a top 32. So in general, an improvement. I think it was a slight improvement in my performance. Ideally, the breakdown of points will be more evenly distributed next season or in future from larger events, because larger events are where I want to improve my performance at. So I feel like it was an improvement on my last season, but in general, I want the distribution to be more evenly weighted between Cups and Challenges and larger events in general. Ideally, the same amount of Cups and Challenges, the same amount of points from Cups and Challenges, but just more from larger events rather than taking away from one to add to the other. I'd like to just get more points next season. But overall, I think it was an improvement. Next season, that's the big sort of question mark we have right now. We don't know what events are going to exist. We do know at this point there is going to be another tier of Worlds Invite. I'm reluctant to set many goals before we know exactly how the season's going to play out, and before I know how comfortable I am in myself in attending events because of the worldwide pandemic. But preliminarily, the main goal for me will be achieving that next tier of Worlds Invite. I expect it to be around 600 points, between 600 and 700 points. I'm currently on 481, so that's just 218 points, 219 points, sorry, for me to be able to achieve that. That would be great. It seems like a really low target considering I wanted to get 500 points last season, but with everything up in the air, with the amount of events that we have going on right now, I don't want to set any goals too hard and fast. That being said, I will hopefully be able to attend a lot of events again. I'm really hoping I can. And if everything is back to normal by the time, and we have a full season, which I don't expect it to be in all honesty, but if there are, basically my goals will be almost identical. I'd like to break 500 points. I'd like 3-day 2s. I'd like to win 3 cups, maybe even 4 this season. I might push myself to try and win a 4th cup this season. And I would like to achieve the 2nd tier of Worlds invite because I'm already in a really good spot to be able to do so. So I hope that is something I can achieve. And as always, as I mentioned at the start, this more statistics thing I think will just be a goal forevermore whilst I'm playing the TCG, just because it's something very interesting to me. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I looked at my first one, or last year's one, and was like, I really don't want this to be another 40-minute video, but here we are. I hope you've enjoyed it. Huge props if you made it all the way through the video. This is a long video, but I really enjoy looking back and analysing how I've done. And if not before, I will see you all at Worlds 2021. I can't promise I'll be at any events before then, but provided Worlds is on, I will be at Worlds 2021. Hopefully more and more events will take place beforehand, but if nothing else, I will continue to push content on OmniPoke, of course, bringing you lots of Darkness Ablaze stuff very, very soon. But yeah, other than that, thank you very much for all your support this season, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next season. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Jack from OmniPoke, and I look forward to seeing you guys in another video.